Namaste everyone, welcome to the Eagle View. Yesterday we would have watched a very interesting update on the reforms of DRDO. Today we are going to see a very important report which is extract from Bloomberg, who had done a economic financial analysis of a war, a predictable war. So we all know currently the world is facing two major conflicts, one between Russia and Ukraine and second between Israel and Hamas. And the third biggest anticipated one, which the world fears or which we really don't want to happen, is the conflict between Taiwan and China, which eventually will lead US to get into a full-fledged war with China. So this particular model has estimated cost of this possible war. The estimated cost of this war is $10 trillion, which is roughly 80 lakh crore in Indian rupee. So this is going to be the cost of war. So we'll see the analysis behind this, how they have worked out this cost of war. And this 10 trillion US dollars is the money which the world will have to lose, or majorly these countries will lose, which is almost 10% of the world's GDP as on today. So we have to closely watch the Jan 13th Taiwan elections, whether the ruling dispensation, which would want to come back, the incumbent government retaining power, or is it the opposition party taking over the power. So let's see what are the crises we currently face in 2024. There is a global financial crisis. Europe has slowed down, US markets have slowed down. Only few economies are growing at above 5%. India is one of the fastest growing economy. Currently, as we said, we are facing two wars, one in Europe and one in Middle East. And we see US-China relationship is at an all-time low. We have seen tensions in Taiwan and South China Sea and also in East China Sea. The impact of COVID is still luring on many of the nations. And the slowdown of the Chinese economy. This is one of the major space to watch out, because China is the second largest GDP in the world. And let's see what are the problems of Xi Jinping, which he is facing internally. All is not well with China. Let's see what all he faces. So first and foremost is decline in domestic demand. The domestic demand, in spite of all the rate cuts by their federal government, federal bank, has not picked up. The demand continues to slow down. Deflation is one of the major problem because of shortage of demand. The prices of goods have come down, and this is really affecting their manufacturing. Third, decline in Chinese imports. That's primarily because the major markets in Europe, Middle East and in US are facing a slowdown. Secondly, the de-risking strategy from China post-COVID. Many countries want to diversify their supply chains to have an alternative supplier apart from China, where we see Foxconn, companies like Apple opening their factories elsewhere elsewhere from China, which is like Taiwan, Thailand, even in India. Real estate crisis, collapse of their Evergrande, which is like $350 billion plus valued company, and Orange County, which is the second major real estate player. The real estate demand has also come down. Default of payments and ghost towns. This complicates and makes it a full-blown real estate crisis. China is also getting into a lot of debt crisis, even though they have not defaulted their payment at a central bank level. But most of their provincial governments, the state governments, are facing a serious debt issue. They are not able to repay it. Default of payments, default of interest is happening. And then high level of corruption in PLA, which in fact we spoke about it in our Tamil channel, where we saw a purge of almost 30 to 40 high-ranking military officials of People Liberation Army being sacked, being killed or being arrested on corruption charges. Now let's see what are the risks which the world faces because of the Taiwan-China conflict. The first and foremost is semiconductors, right from the digital cameras, mobile phones, smartphones, medical equipments, electronic devices, laptops, tablets, your automobiles, everything we use as on today has got a semiconductor in it. So any disruption in supply chain of semiconductor will have a drastic effect on all the items that we use every day. It's severely going to hit consumer durables, electronics, and also automobile industry. Second, we will have a serious issue in terms of supply chain disruptions. All of us import a chunk of machineries, pharmaceutical APIs, a hell lot of goods which comes from China, not only by India, by various other countries. We have 150 plus billion dollars of trade with China. So all those will face disruptions that will eventually lead to shortage of supply, which will eventually lead to inflation. The third, prolonged inflation and prolonged slowdown and supply chain disruptions will eventually push those fragile economies into recession. So now, what are the possible scenarios which we can envisage as per this report of the Chinese invasion on Taiwan? First is encircle them, kind of quarantine Taiwan with a massive naval force, quarantine them, isolate them. Then possibly the second step would be go take over, seize those outlying islands, and third, a full-blown invasion on the Taiwanese mainland. So this is going to be a very serious threat because after the turning point in this entire story would be 2022, I think August, where US Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan. That's when China responded with major military rhetoric of firing missiles, crossing the ADRs, and firing missiles, encircling with ships, massive Chinese presence. That's where people really started thinking that this war is going to be imminent and we need to find alternate supply chains. So 95% of the world MNCs have started discussing about it in their boardrooms, about possible supply chain disruptions and the impact it may have on their company. And then we have the chips, which is the nano semiconductors, that is going to have a huge impact on it. It's typically called a golden screw in any electronics, so without which any electronic product cannot be complete. So countries which are pursuing their space missions, medical technologies, innovations, everything will be hit because of this. And TSMC, which is a major chip manufacturing company in the world, a Taiwanese company, which current market cap with the top 20 customer is $7.4 trillion. So that is also facing a huge risk of disinvestment. And a lot of companies, including the star investors like Warren Buffett, have removed or are divested from this company. So we see sizable amount of stocks being sold in the open market and also by the institutional buyers. So that's going to have a severe impact on Taiwan. And then, as I said, the consumer durable, electronics, automobile industry, everything will come to a standstill. Maybe it may not be a standstill, but it will have a very, very severe blow. Now look at cost of economics, cost of this war and scale of economics of possible Chinese-Taiwan war is, it will straight away blow out 40% of Taiwanese GDP in the very first year. It will have 16% GDP of, it will cost 16% GDP of China, and because US being the major stakeholder in it, it will eventually cost 6.7% of US GDP. This collectively accounts to, there are other economies like India, Europe, Russia, everybody will get hit because of this. So this sums up to $10 trillion of economic loss for the world, which accounts to 10% of the world's GDP if this war happens. Now, the turning point here, which in fact I would say US smartly trapped China into, is there was preparations of China. We have seen amphibious landing exercises. We have seen Chinese fighter jets intruding into the air defense identification zone of Taiwan. So these were all happening, but the world was not actually seeing it very, very seriously, or to look at as a look at the angle of risk perspective. But what turned this event was Nancy Pelosi's visit in August 2022. It was believed that China will not allow her to land as per the domestic sentiments, but eventually she landed. And then China was a typical rhetoric response, firing missiles in the sea, sending more fighter jets, and it was uncertain, but nothing really they could do any concretely. But the world shook up to the reality, especially the Europe, even in fact Middle East, all of this country shook up to the reality that this war is possible. It is no more a US propaganda. The moment this happened, European Union, especially countries like Italy, came out of BRI. We saw the one plus China policy, where you have to have an alternate supplier. You have one factory in China, you got to have one more factory elsewhere to re-risk it. So de-risking strategy was proposed by Europe, and decoupling strategy was proposed by US. Even though decoupling is not possible considering the amount of trade which China and US does it, but the world actually started looking for alternatives. That's why we saw South Asian countries and more stable countries and growing economies like India, even in Africa, we have seen the diversification of Chinese manufacturing coming into these various countries. So this has become a reality now. Every country in their policy decisions, every bigger MNC in their boardrooms discuss about this possible supply chain disruption. And we also have to understand Taiwan Strait has got the world's busiest trade sea route. So it is going to affect trade, it's going to affect economy, it is going to affect the supply chain of almost all the countries and all the MNCs. So now everybody is looking out for a business continuity plan or an de-risking strategy to cater for this scenario. Now, the geopolitical and economic modeling of a war, this is, I think, possibly a full-blown attempt to understand the cost of war. Whenever we say cost of war, we understand, in military terms, where people lose soldiers, we get emotional, people lose their military assets, territory, and so on. But this war, if it eventually happens, even if it continues for a period of a year, this is going to cost us $10 trillion globally, which accounts to 10% of the world's GDP. So now coming close to the Jan 13th election in Taiwan, which is hardly a day away, we have two parties, the DPP, which is the incumbent party headed by Lai, who speaks about Taiwanese independence and who actively engages with the US and the Chinese enemies. The opposite side is TPP, Taiwanese People Party, which is headed by who? They speak about retaining autonomy and to have a better engagement with the mainland China. So these are the two parties, but all likely we would see the DPP, which wants independence from Taiwan from China, winning this election. So 2027, which was earmarked as a danger year as per all the Chinese propaganda and the Chinese military studies, think schools and the experts, subject matter experts predicted 2027 to be the danger year of China going on a full-fledged offensive against Taiwan, because she even now says that this cannot be postponed forever. Someday has to arrive that we will have to go for reunification in the greater China. And the mightier China, he sold it to his people. So the global investors are they are diversifying from the Taiwanese stocks. They are also looking for alternative suppliers from China. But with the current purge in the Chinese military and the amount of corruption which the PLA has got into, their operational readiness and their quality of equipment, these are the two major criteria which puts a serious question on Xi Jinping whether he should really take this adventure of invading Taiwan and end up where. So this is kind of delaying this entire process. We hope this war doesn't happen and we hope the world is at peace. But if at all this happens, it's not only going to cost soldiers and lives, it is going to cost us $10 trillion of money, which is 10% of the world's GDP. Hope you like this video. Do like, share and subscribe. Thank you all. Jai Hind.